Explorers descend into the depths of a lost Egyptian temple, swallowed by the sea centuries ago.
Hieroglyphics, barely visible under centuries of sediment, hint at the temple's ceremonial purpose. A ceremonial gold amulet emerges from the sand, tarnished but intact after centuries underwater.
The temple's massive pillars lie toppled, encrusted with coral and marine life over hundreds of years.
Human remains in ceremonial robes hint at offerings or priestly burials within the temple.
Fragments of statues depict Egyptian deities, eroded but still recognizable under the flashlight beam.
Ancient pottery, partially buried and encrusted with marine life, shows ritual practices of temple priests.
The altar, cracked and corroded by centuries underwater, stands as the centerpiece of the temple's submerged chamber.
A ceremonial dagger, oxidized and covered in barnacles, reveals the craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian rituals.
Rows of toppled statues, heavily corroded and encrusted with marine life, tell the story of a temple lost to the sea.
A statue of Anubis, guardian of the dead, lies half-buried, its features worn by centuries underwater.
The temple's columns stretch into the depths, each corroded surface telling a story of time and tide. A ceremonial bowl, filled with traces of ancient pigments, hints at temple rituals long forgotten. The doorway, though fractured, marks the entrance to a chamber lost beneath centuries of sediment. A gold ring, engraved with worn hieroglyphics, hints at the wealth and devotion of the temple's patrons.
Pieces of an obelisk lie scattered, their surfaces eroded but still carrying traces of sacred inscriptions.
A ceremonial mask, tarnished and covered in marine grout, evokes the spiritual ceremonies once held here.
Collapsed chambers reveal pottery and human remains, silent witnesses to centuries of history.
Intricate lotus carvings, partially encrusted by coral, hint at the temple's symbolic artistry.
A row of small statues, worn and covered in marine grout, marks the sacred layout of this underwater temple.
A bronze falcon, eroded and covered in marine grout, represents the god Horus, protector of the temple.
Collapsed walls with worn inscriptions hint at prayers and rituals once performed here. A ceremonial scepter, heavily corroded, suggests the high rank of temple priests in ancient rituals. Pottery jars, scattered and corroded, once held offerings for the gods, now resting silently beneath the waves. The altar stands as a central relic, corroded but still commanding presence in the submerged temple. A ceremonial dagger, oxidized and adorned with gold inlays, tells of the temple's ritual significance. Obelisk fragments, heavily encrusted, reveal sacred inscriptions that have endured centuries underwater.
A ceremonial necklace, tarnished but intact, reflects the craftsmanship and devotion of ancient Egyptians. The temple's architectural remnants, corroded and encrusted, stretch into the underwater depths, telling stories of time and decay.
A seated deity, worn and covered in marine grout, watches silently over the sunken temple.
A statue of Bastet, garden of home and fertility, lies eroded, yet unmistakable beneath the sea.
A ceremonial chest, sealed by centuries of sediment, hints at hidden temple treasures. The temple ruins stretch into the distance, each corroded fragment whispering stories of lost rituals. A gold bracelet, worn by time and sea, reflects the artistry of ancient priests. Miniature obelisks, once carefully aligned, now lie corroded and scattered on the seabed. Faint inscriptions on crumbling walls hint at ancient prayers and ceremonial texts. The central altar, corroded and encrusted, remains a focal point of the submerged temple.
An Eye of Horus amulet emerges, worn by centuries yet still recognizable.
A corroded statue lies toppled on the sand, bearing witness to centuries of underwater history.
A ceremonial necklace, preserved by sand and time, reflects the artistry of ancient temple rituals.
Eroded pillars bear faded inscriptions, remnants of sacred texts carved centuries ago.
Rows of toppled statues stretch across the seabed, silent witnesses to rituals lost to time. A ceremonial dagger, tarnished by centuries underwater, emerges as a symbol of ancient ritual authority.
A ceremonial mask, worn by time, reveals intricate design now softened by marine growth.
Pottery jars, corroded and partially buried, hint at offerings once made to the gods.
The central altar, corroded yet intact, remains the heart of the submerged temple.
A bronze deity, corroded but discernible, symbolizes the spiritual life of the temple.
Fragments of obelisks bear inscriptions, slowly eaten away by the passage of centuries underwater.
Collapsed chambers reveal a mixture of ceremonial artifacts and human presence, preserved beneath centuries of sand and coral.
A small scarab amulet, tarnished but intact, symbolizes protection and rebirth in ancient rituals. The temple's structural ruins stretch into the depths, each corroded column telling a story of time and decay. The temple's structural ruins stretch into the depths, each corroded column telling a story of time and decay. Eroded inscriptions on the wall offer glimpses into ancient prayers and temple ceremonies. A ceremonial ring, worn by centuries underwater, reveals the artistry of ancient Egyptian craftsmen.
Small statues, partially buried and corroded, mark the sacred arrangement within the submerged temple.
Ceremonial bowls, corroded and filled with centuries-old sediment, hint at the temple's ritualistic past. The central altar, worn and corroded, remains the heart of the temple's submerged sacred space.
A bronze falcon, symbol of Horus, lies corroded but discernible amidst the sand. Obelisk fragments, heavily encrusted, carry traces of sacred inscriptions slowly worn by the sea.
Collapsed chambers reveal ceremonial artifacts and human presence, silently preserved beneath centuries of sand and coral.
An ankh-shaped amulet, symbolizing life, emerges from centuries of sediment.
Corroded pillars stretch across the seabed, each fragment echoing the temple's grandeur lost to time.
Faded inscriptions hint at prayers once spoken within these sacred walls.
A ceremonial ring, tarnished and corroded, reflects the devotion of ancient worshippers. Rows of corroded statues, partially buried, mark the temple's ritualistic layout. Ceremonial bowls, filled with sediment, reveal the ancient rituals practiced here.
The central altar remains corroded but intact, symbolizing the sacred heart of the submerged temple.
A bronze deity, worn by centuries underwater, silently watches over the temple ruins.
Obelisk fragments, corroded and encrusted, carry faint inscriptions, slowly faded by time. Collapsed chambers reveal ceremonial artifacts and human presence, preserved beneath centuries of sand and coral.
An Eye of Horus amulet emerges from centuries of sediment, symbolizing protection and divine watchfulness.
The corroded pillars mark the skeletal remains of the temple's once grand architecture.
Faded inscriptions hint at ancient prayers and ceremonial texts carved into sacred stone.
A gold bracelet, tarnished by centuries underwater, showcases the intricate craftsmanship of ancient Egypt. Toppled statues, partially buried in sand, reveal the temple's sacred arrangement and rituals.
Ceremonial bowls, corroded and sediment-covered, offer clues to ancient ritual practices.
The altar, corroded yet intact, remains the central focus of the temple's sacred chamber. A bronze falcon, symbolizing Horus, lies partially buried but still discernible in the sand.
Obelisk fragments, corroded and encrusted, reveal faint inscriptions, slowly eaten away by centuries underwater.
Collapsed chambers reveal layers of ceremonial artifacts and human presence, silently preserved beneath centuries of sand and coral.
A lotus-shaped amulet, worn by centuries underwater, reflects the symbolic beauty of Egyptian rituals. Collapsed columns mark the skeletal remains of the temple's grand architecture.
Faint inscriptions etched into corroded walls hint at ceremonial texts of the past.
A ceremonial ring emerges from centuries of sediment, showcasing intricate craftsmanship of the temple.
Toppled statues, encrusted and worn, reveal the sacred layout of the temple's ceremonial spaces.
Ceremonial bowls, filled with centuries-old sediment, hint at rituals once performed in the temple.
The corroded altar remains the focal point of the submerged sacred chamber.
A bronze falcon, symbol of Horus, lies partially buried, preserving the spiritual essence of the temple. Obelisk fragments, encrusted and corroded, show traces of inscriptions slowly worn by time.
Collapsed chambers reveal ceremonial artifacts and human presence, silently preserved beneath centuries of sand and coral.
A gold amulet depicting a deity emerges from centuries of sediment, preserving ancient spiritual symbolism.
Collapsed columns stretch across the seabed, remnants of the temple's grand architecture.
Faint inscriptions on corroded walls hint at ceremonial texts and prayers of ancient priests.
A ceremonial ring, worn and corroded, showcases the intricate craftsmanship of the temple artisans.
Toppled statues, corroded and encrusted, reflect the temple's sacred layout and ceremonial past.
Ceremonial bowls, covered in sediment and marine growth, offer insights into ancient rituals.
The corroded altar remains the heart of the temple's sacred chamber, silently commanding the space. A bronze falcon, symbolizing Horus, lies partially buried but discernible, watching over the temple ruins.
Obelisk fragments, corroded and encrusted, bear faint inscriptions slowly worn by centuries underwater.
Collapsed chambers reveal layers of ceremonial artifacts and human presence, silently preserved beneath centuries of sand and coral.